The C runabouts are about to cross the starting line. That is boat 35R. Let's check that. I believe that's Don Pontius of Hummel's Wharf, Florida, crossing the starting line first.
Don Pontius has been national champion in this class. I think he is the winningest driver in terms of national champions in all of APBA stock racing. He has literally been king of this class since the late 1960s.
Mike, in the C-Stock runabout class, maybe you can tell us a bit about the motors that they're running in these boats.
Yeah, these are Yamato motors manufactured in Japan, and interestingly enough, in Japan they're used in pari-mutuel racing. They bet on boats in Japan the way we bet on horses here in the U.S. The motors, once they're 4 or 5 months old, can't be used anymore, so they ship them over here and they're rebuilt and sold very reasonably into APBA stock racing. But David, we've got a barn burner of a race down the back straightaway here. A clump of boats contesting for the lead going down into corner 2 on this first lap.
We see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 boats, all within a very, very makeable distance of each other, and just one boat, or
Watch
two
these
boats
turns.
that are out of it.
Watch the turns in these runabouts. The drivers literally pick them up by their sides and roll them around the corners. And the boats, of course, are trying to jump out from underneath them.
We have a boat coming way out wide on that turn, and that's going to be very costly for that driver. Coming across in first place after one lap, boat 75M, Tim Ross of West Bloomfield, Michigan, down in the Detroit area. But he is in no way, shape, or form off to the races just yet.
No, we still have 2/3 of the race to go, but Ross is also always a tough competitor in this and a very difficult man to pass.
They head down around turn number, into the first turn coming off of the front stretch. And Ross is in the lead, but again, a couple of boats very close behind, and there's 3 boats basically that if they reached out of their boat, they could all shake hands.
Yeah, great race going on for second place. That looks like Pontius to me, though, that's popped out of that pack and is now giving. There, we've got one upside down in, right at the exit pin of turn 1. So one of those runabouts did successfully jump right out from underneath the driver.
So the drivers will run under a bit of caution. The blue and white flag is out. Maybe you can explain what that blue and white flag means to this race.
Well, it just is a flag to warn the drivers as they enter the corner that there is an obstacle on the race course. If the turn judges down in that turn deem that he is out of harm's way, the race will continue. If he is at all in jeopardy, they have the authority to throw a red flag and halt the heat. But that does not look like it's happening. Evidently, the driver and boat are inside the race course now, and so the race continues, David.
If they were to halt the heat, then we would restart and run the heat again from second number 1.
Right.
Again, in first place, 75M, Mike Ross of Waterford, Michigan. Second, 32P, that's Don Pontius of Hummel's Wharf, Florida. Pardon that, Hummel's Wharf is in Pennsylvania. Getting the geography a bit mixed up as they head down into the turn where the accident had occurred. We're unable at this point to identify the driver that is out of the race. But that is an area that they are watching. They were able to get the upended boat inside the racing area and out of harm's way, so the race continues. Mike Ross of Waterford, Michigan, followed by Don Pontius of Hummel's Wharf, Florida, the top 2 racers at this point in the first elimination heat of the C-Stock runabouts.
Still a good race for 4th position. There's 2 boats side by side, trimmed out beautifully and headed down the back straightaway. And 4th is still an extremely important position because that 4th place driver still does have a shot at a national championship, depending on the start in heat number 2.
How do they rank the point system? 400 for first, 300 for second. How do they go from there?
It's 225 for 3rd, I believe 169 for 4th, and 115 for 5th.
Mike Ross still running in first place, the Waterford, Michigan native, as we head into the, in car racing, what would be called the gun lap. And that is the checkered flag. We actually got through the 3rd lap there, so Mike Ross, the unofficial winner, In second, Don Pontius of Hummel's Wharf, PA. And we'll have to wait for the judging to see who comes in 2, 3, 4. There you see crossing line 42M, Kerry Hamlin of Grass Lake, Michigan. Very, very close for the 2, 3, 4 positions.
Yes, it usually is. For some reason, one boat generally is able to pop out of that pack into corner number 1 and establish the lead, and then there's usually a gaggle of boats for second, third, and fourth behind him. And for no reason that I can explain, David, but you'll see that develop as a pattern, I expect, as the day wears on.
Mike, a veteran of the APBA race circuit yourself, having qualified for the finals yourself.
Well, thank you. Yes, I've qualified in B stock hydroplane, which runs probably as the last event tomorrow.
We'll take a break and be back with more right after this. Welcome back to Sunday Lake. We are ready for the second heat of the C stock runabouts to begin. The leader after the first heat is Mike Ross of Waterford, Michigan in boat 75M. Other boats to watch. The second place finisher in heat number 1, 32P, Don Pontius, and Tim Ross, 175M of West Bloomfield, Michigan. They are coming into the chute, getting ready for the beginning of heat number 2 in the C stock runabouts. Dave Dennis along with Mike Motherway. And Mike, we've got a tight grouping as we head for the starting line.
Well, they're strung out beautifully. Some drivers like the outside, the inside, but now, bang, the first one across is the U.S. number. Yeah, R.C. Howie, the first boat across the line this time, but they are really in a great lineup. There wasn't a quarter of a boat length difference in the 8 boats, the first 8 boats across the line. So this could make for a very wet and wild first turn.
That's for certain. Again, the top 3 coming into the second heat. Mike Ross of Waterford, Michigan, 75M, 32P, Don Pontius, and 175M, Tim Ross of West Bloomfield, Michigan.
Now there's the wall of water in corner number 1, and it looks like Pontius has probably jumped into the lead. No, he's got a boat on his outside, David. 3 of them now coming out of turn 1. 3 boats side by side for the lead. I believe that's Pontius on the inside, and I can't pick up the other 2 numbers. But we've got a real drag race down the back straightaway.
2 U.S. on the backstretch. That is R.C. Howie of Aberdeen, New Jersey. In first place, 32P, Don Pontius of Hummel's Wharf, PA.
Oh, and he's really fighting that boat. It's very, very choppy going into the second turn. Let's see if this phalanx of 3 boats behind him can move up. Look at this. Look at this race for second, and they're moving right up on Pontius in the turns as he bounced through that rough second corner.
Pontius in first place. Another boat trying to cut inside of Don Pontius. Pontius still in first. The 2 U.S. R.C. Howie of Aberdeen, New Jersey, 75M.
It's Ross.
The Michigan boat, that's Ross. The 2 U.S. is in third, and in fourth place, 34P. And it looks like down the backstretch, Pontius is still up ahead as they head into that back turn. Don Pontius coming around, headed toward the backstretch in first place. In second place, 75M, Mike Ross of Waterford, Michigan. 1, 2, 3, the boats are tight along the backstretch.
Now we had one boat forced in off the course, and he missed a buoy, and he was running up in the group of 4 or 5, and he's just had to come back and recircle the buoys. He's in last place.
So you're not out of the race if you miss a buoy, but you do have to go back. It's like if you miss second base, you got to go back and touch it before you can cross home plate.
Great race for second place, David. A great race for second place. Less than a boat length separating these boats halfway through this one.
75M, Mike Ross, and 2 U.S. R.C. Howie running tight, second and third. And the fourth place boat is not much farther behind. It's been close from the beginning. Don Pontius in first place.
They just left the door open for that fourth place boat. That battle carried those 2 boats out wide, and the fourth place boat really gained some ground coming out of that turn. He's moved right up even with number 3 now.
Pontius in first, 75M, Mike Ross in second. These boats were flip-flopped in the first heat. Pontius was second, Mike Ross was first. So they would finish, if the race continues as is, where Mike Ross was first in the first heat, Don Pontius was second in the first heat. Pontius now leads heat number 2. They would tie on points if the race remains as is. And what would happen is it would come down to their times.
Yes, the elapsed time would then determine the national championship. But the beat still goes on for second, third, and fourth place. Look at that boat race. Coming out of corner number 1 now on this, the last lap in this 3-lap sprint for the national championship, heat 2.
Don Pontius in first place. And still in second, the downstate Michigan racer, Mike Ross. Take a look at what we've got going on for 3 and 4.
R.C. Howie in there this time, and R.C. in 2US is the national high point champion, and he's showing his form running up close here in heat number 2. The third place boat is Brian Pontius, and that's Don's son. So we have a father and son team out there battling to stay in the top 3, and of course Don trying to run as hard as he can to establish a big lead so that he can win this thing on points.
And I tell you, Mike Ross has got a race on his hands. Mike finished in first place in the first race. He needs to stay at least second to tie Don Pontius in the points race. It's Don Pontius, 32B, Mike Ross, 75M, Brian Pontius, 34B. So we have a points tie for first place.
Yes, we'll have to wait for the scorers to total up the elapsed times of both boats, as we just had one terrific runabout race here at the National Champions. Who will it be? My guess is it'll be Ross. I think Ross was further ahead of Pontius than Pontius was ahead of Ross in this last heat. But we will have to wait for the official scores to tell us. And
we will also have to wait for them to pass that very, very rigorous second inspection, which will not be a short time before we get official results.
Well, that's right. The motors will be completely torn down and inspected from stem to stern. The boats will be weighed. The fuel will be checked. The transom heights will be checked. Virtually every component on the boat is checked for rule compliance, and that could take as long as a couple of hours before the results really become official. But it doesn't surprise me that Pontius probably won't have any trouble. I think he's won this class 14 times in the last 25 years or so.
Unofficially, Don Pontius of Hummel's Wharf, PA, and Mike Ross of Waterford, Michigan.
And Pontius's boat just went dead in the water as he was coming in. That's the way to build a motor. Pontius is going to need to be towed in to inspection.
It's that 90-day warranty that runs out on day 91. Unofficially, in the C-Stock runabouts, a points tie for first place between Mike Ross of Waterford, Michigan, and Don Pontius of Hummel's Wharf, PA. Unofficially is the key word. We'll be back.